Every time a car crosses the Chicago Skyway, a small transaction happens that has almost nothing to do with Chicago. The toll, $5.90 for a car, more for anything with extra axles, doesn't go to the city. It doesn't go to Illinois. It goes eventually into the retirement accounts of Canadian school teachers, municipal employees, and public sector retirees who have never seen the bridge and never will. Somewhere in a pension statement mailed to a retired teacher outside Toronto, a fraction of a cent from that toll is quietly compounding. That's not a metaphor. That's literally who owns the lease. The common assumption about a toll road is that it's public infrastructure, built with tax dollars, maintained by the state, and the tolls you pay just help cover the cost of keeping it paved. Your money, in some indirect way, stays close to home. For a growing number of American toll roads, that assumption is simply out of date. In 2005, the city of Chicago leased the Skyway, the 7.8-mile toll bridge connecting the Indiana Toll Road to the south side, to a private consortium for 99 years in exchange for $1.8 billion paid up front. The buyers were a Spanish infrastructure company and an Australian investment group. The lease runs until 2104. The toll schedule, including the increases, was written into the contract that day. Then, in 2016, something happened that says more about what this really is than the original deal did. The consortium that held the Skyway lease sold it again, not to the city, not back to the public, but to a trio of Canadian pension funds for $2.8 billion. $1 billion more than they'd paid 11 years earlier. Nobody repaved anything to justify that markup. The toll schedule was already locked in by contract. The thing that got more valuable was simply the right to keep collecting it. The city wasn't really selling a road back in 2005. It was selling decades of future cash flow, all at once in exchange for a lump sum today. And Chicago wasn't alone. Indiana ran almost the identical playbook a year later, a 157-mile toll road, leased for 75 years for $3.8 billion to the same kind of Spanish-Australian partnership. The road had lost money the year before because the state hadn't raised tolls in over 2 decades. The private buyers fixed that immediately and resold the lease in 2015 for $5.7 billion to a firm owned by Australian pension funds. And it isn't only toll roads. In 2008, facing a budget crisis, Chicago made a second deal, this time for something even more ordinary, its parking meters. All 36,000 of them, leased for 75 years, to a group led by Morgan Stanley and partly backed by the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. The price, $1.15 billion. The city's own inspector general later found the meters had been sold for roughly $1 billion less than they were actually worth. Parking rates, which had sat around $0.25 an hour for decades, climbed towards $7 an hour within a few years. By one recent estimate, the investors are on pace to collect somewhere around $12 billion total by the time the lease ends, on an asset they paid a little over $1 billion for. 3 different deals. 3 different kinds of infrastructure. Same basic shape every time. A government trades decades of future income for one lump sum today. And the buyer on the other side of that trade turns out to be very, very good at knowing what decades of future income are actually worth. Every one of these leases was underwritten by people whose entire job is pricing exactly that kind of long-horizon cash flow, which is a very different skill set than the one required to run a city budget for the next fiscal year. Why would a pension fund specifically want assets like these more than almost any other kind of investment? The answer is in what a pension fund actually needs. A pension has to pay retirees a predictable amount for decades, no matter what the stock market is doing in any given year. A toll road or a parking system, once the price schedule is locked into a multi-decade contract, produces almost exactly that. Cash arriving on a predictable schedule. from millions of small mandatory transactions. For as long as people keep driving to work, it behaves less like a highway and more like a bond that happens to have cars on it. To be fair to the officials who signed these deals, there's a real reason they did. Robert Poole, a transportation policy expert who has advised state governments on exactly this kind of lease, has argued for years that running a toll road or a parking system was never really a core function of city government in the first place, and that these leases let cities convert an illiquid, hard-to-manage asset into cash they can spend on more pressing needs right away. Then Mayor Richard Daley made almost exactly that case when he signed the Chicago deals, framing the upfront cash as the only realistic way to avoid tax hikes and service cuts during a budget crisis. That's a real pressure. And it explains why a government would take this deal. It doesn't change what the deal actually was. The government needed money now. The investors could afford to wait. And that difference in time horizon was worth billions. Chicago's own Inspector General later put a number on just the parking meters alone, finding the city had priced them roughly $1 billion below what they were actually worth. None of these deals happened in secret. They're public record, voted on by city councils and state legislatures, covered by local news at the time, some fought over in court for over a decade since. Chicago's parking meter vote took barely 72 hours from proposal to approval. The city solved this year's budget. The investors bought the next century. Everyone who approved the sale has since left office. The lease hasn't. The road looks exactly the same as it always did. It's the fine print about who gets paid for it, and for how many decades that quietly changed underneath the traffic. Settled by whoever understood the value of that fine print better on the day it was signed. There's more beneath every business than you see. This is the business beneath. Subscribe to uncover what's next.